And we're back.
Hello again. Yes, indeed. Namo Mirabutsu. Good evening again.
Well,
So,
good evening.
thank you. Right. So let me share my screen and gain strength from the sharing. Hopefully, in the words of Spock's brother, Cybok. Right. So we were going over the 4 different types of Chakravartin, and should be a little bit less distracting, by the way. I've moved the animal realm into the next realm, into the next quadrant,
Next
to the
continent.
next next continent. I moved them along. Yeah, like a yaksha. I just, and I didn't know. I didn't throw them. I didn't throw them into the next world system. I just gently carried them, moved them along into the next, instead of throwing them like a yaksha. Anyway, so yeah, and I didn't really quite pull off a cliffhanger last time. That's unusual. Usually there's something that was a cliffhanger, but I was hoping for something, especially with the Chakravartin, like some
Yeah, you
cliffhanger
wanted
to,
to.
but I couldn't, yeah, couldn't. It just wasn't there this time. It just didn't. Right. So, um, and you were making a point. Yeah, we were talking about just, that by this, definition that uh, King Aśoka was most likely an iron Chakravartin,
So the question
based
then,
on
which
this. Yeah.
we may well be coming to,
Yes.
that's the this
There
is
is a.
like a
Yeah.
belated cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Um, is does it work its way back again? Does it go back iron, copper, silver, gold, or does it
Ah.
loop around back to
Yeah,
gold? Right,
that
because
would
there's
make
both
sense
possibilities.
actually, because I always, with the ascending kalpa, that would actually make sense that intuitively that you would see, you know, so we get to once it gets to like the road level of Mapo, Carthy's the road level of Mapo and beyond, when it gets like really bad, you know, and then it starts to turn around, and those who have hidden themselves away, that have some virtue and realize, all of this stuff that we, well, quite weird human beings by that point, that devolved to that point. But we humans, that have been, this cannibalism and warring all the time, and just, uh, selfishness and aggression, and it's wrong. And some of them just start to kind of, human beings start being born again that have a little bit of virtue, and then after Mappo, the Kalpa then ascends upward to the ascending side of the Kalpa. And the yeah, and as that would ascend, you would think that, so first at some point iron Chakravartins would appear, and you know
Hmm,
and then
hmm, hmm.
at some point copper would appear, you know incredibly long periods of time later, and then silver, you know kings would appear, and then ultimately the ultimate, Chakravartin appears at the, very height of that ascending side of the Kalpa, which is an incredibly long period of time until then. And likewise in the descending. So you did have actually, and there's in Buddhist cosmology, there's a discussion of the first Chakravartin king that appears, which is interesting. Just like it, you know, it the chakra, what appeared first was the need
Mm.
at the very height of this, the beginning of this descending kalpa, when conditions were quite good, you know, probably equal to what it'll be at the ascending side, when it's time for the Chakravartin and Maitreya. There was a point where a need arose because of the just slightly declining virtue, and when humans it became more like what we see in human form, there was a need. A need arose because of this the selfishness that had arisen in various ways, and almost territorialness, and the it just that, but it was a much more higher level when this was happening, and a much more refined level. But the need arose for someone needs to set up some rules. Someone with some wisdom and virtue and compassion needs to set up some rules for us to, and that's when the first, out of that need, the Chakravartin king appears. The first,
mm,
no doubt the wheel, the first,
mm,
and uh, and then there's a lineage, in Buddhist texts. There's a lineage of those, the kings that, for a very long time, until I think the last one that was kind of discussed was pretty, you know, low on the scale compared to the first one. So I'm wondering if that is a kind of, you know, representation of these four different types of kings, or some reflection of that maybe in those. And maybe, because
mm,
maybe those higher one, at that earlier time, they were still, even the lowest was quite, the lowest of those Chakravartins in that lineage were probably quite you know virtuous still, even though it got worse and worse. But anyway, I would think that as that this, our side of the Kalpa, this first side of the Kalpa, the descending Kalpa, as it goes down, then yeah, it would be, you had the Gold King, and then later on you'll have the Silver Kings and the Copper Kings and the Iron Kings, and the ones we had,
mm, 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 mm,
and
mm,
the
mm,
very bottom of the latter. Yeah, I think intuitively, I would think it, it goes the other way around, up the other side of the Kalpa, um, as virtue, human beings are being born that are more born with more virtue, born with better karmic causes and conditions. Gradually, you know, things get better, which is another thing that I want to bring into this discussion really quick here, is that, we're trying to take this discussion of this idealized king, and then eventually we're going to talk about the Buddhist kingship in another episode, a couple of episodes of kingship, and the tenfold virtue of the ruler. But we're taking this and applying it to a very we're going to try to glean from
mm.
this some guidelines for a very unideal time, for a time of iron kings, and below, probably. you know I would
I mean,
say probably be
I wish we had
below,
Iron
much
Kings.
below iron kings. Yeah. What's that? Sorry, what'd you say?
No, I wish we had Iron Kings.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
thoroughly in the mud
exactly.
now.
Yes. Now it's like, yeah, much lower elements on that scale of fine, stones and valued gems and stones. It's probably very low quality of metals anyway that we have as our rulers. But so so in an ascending kalpa, I'd say almost any time in the ascending kalpa, it'd be much easier to say, yeah, that would just apply. It would just, that makes sense. People of that, in the ascending kalpa, just about any time in it, these principles would make sense and would just be like, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Mm,
Do you know
mm,
what I mean? Even a very low point,
mm,
if it's an ascending, do you see what I mean? Even if it's just the beginning of the ascending kalpa, these concepts are going to be just more natural. Yeah, of course, that makes sense that we would behave that way. Of course, that's you know but we're in an inverted thing, just like we were struggling with the evil charisma in the last episode.
mm, 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 mm.
We're in like inverted times where things are just turned on their head, and are just very unideal. um so we're trying to take these ideal teachings of Buddhism and apply them to very unideal times. And and I think Jodo Shinshu, Shin Buddhism, is uniquely kind of positioned or qualified to kind of speak to that, because so much of our teaching is about, it focuses on Mappo, and our Dharma masters discussed, the times and beings, and, things being in accord with times and beings. And so it's, we have to look for what's in accord with the times and the beings now in our limited bamboo way, take these ideals and somehow, that's what we're trying to do. And it's a challenge. Um, um, but it's just something I wanted to kind of say and bring into the discussion because it seemed to fit at this juncture. So, right, shall we go on then to the comparison to the Buddha of the Chakravartin? Or is there anything else you wanted to say,
No,
actually, before
no,
we
no.
move on? Yeah.
Let's continue.
Okay. So, attributes of comparison to the Buddha, physical attributes. Chakravartins have similar physical attributes to a Buddha. Like the Buddhas, a Chakravartin is said to be endowed with the 32 major marks and the 80 minor marks of a superior person. So should we look at that a bit? What they are, yeah? So the Mahaparu Salaksana. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
A very good mouthful, though. So yeah, the marks of a great man is a list of 32 marks possessed by both Buddhas and Chakravartins. These marks or signs are also referred to as major marks of a great person, 32 marks of a great man, 32 signs of a great man, 32 major marks of a Buddha. These marks are derived from virtuous acts in previous lives. Very key. The marks are said to be fully present on the body of a Buddha, especially in the Sambhogakaya, with similitudes of the marks found on the body of the Chakravartin.
So I
So
wonder if that,
interesting.
yeah, I wonder if
Yeah.
that means that they're more pronounced in the Sambhogakaya and then less pronounced on the Nirmanakaya
In
and
the
then less pronounced
Nirmanakaya.
still
Yeah, I think,
on the
yes.
Chakravartin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. How do we? And I was, yeah, similar. I was kind of looking at that in a similar way, that they're probably more, you can see them more clearly, a more refined way in the Sambhogakaya, you know, uh, body of the Buddha. And the Nirmanakaya, it's more physical, more the more, human
Mm-hmm.
realm kind of way. Um, There are a variety of versions of the list of 32 marks, though they generally agree on most features. Let's look here. So shall we go through the 32 marks as quickly as possible? So the following list of 32 major marks is from the Buddhist Text Translation Society. Yeah. So there we go. We'll give you the little reference. 1, level feet. 2, and just stop me if you want to discuss any of these.
Mm-hmm.
2, 1,000 spoked wheel sign on feet. 3, long slender fingers. Interesting. 4, pliant hands and feet. 5, toes and fingers finely webbed.
I mean that's the one I was thinking of earlier because I mean you could imagine degrees of having a hand webbed, right?
Yes.
I mean, you could have it like I mean, in one extreme something like, the creature from the Black Lagoon level
Yeah.
webbed, and I mean, just like, webbed could mean just a little more than what we already like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's how webbed is webbed. But
But obviously, it's probably on a Buddha. It's a very probably a very attractive
Yeah, well, yeah, not like the
Kind of not like the yeah, the
yeah,
creature
not
from the
the
Black
creature from the
Lagoon.
Black Lagoon, but
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting. It's you think that's another quality. You think along with the slender fingers, the long slender fingers, and you have the webbing. It's almost a slightly alien. When we think of a
mm.
alien quality to this depiction, obviously in a more divine way and a refined way, but it's not something in what I'm trying to say is it's not you have that reaction. To me, that's this innate part of me saying this isn't exactly an earthly being, this isn't an ordinary
Mm.
human being. There's something you know that transcends the human here. There's something that's transcendent. That's almost a divine quality, something otherworldly, not something of necessarily the strictly in the human realm. If you see what I mean.
Well, yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah.
a Buddha is not
Yeah.
there's that quote that the sort of, this sort of secularist modernist take on Buddhism loves, that about Shakyamuni's asked if he's a god, and he says no, but
Mhm.
the very next sentence is him also saying he's not a man.
Exactly. I
We'll
was
sort
gonna
of
raise
sign
that
it
as
off at
well.
that
Yeah.
point.
Exactly. I was gonna raise that as well. Yeah. And was it meant to be a Jain on the road that
Oh,
he spoke
I
to?
don't, that would be new to me. But,
Anyway, but yeah,
entirely
I could be
possible.
wrong. I could be wrong about
Yeah,
that. Anyway, but yeah, I was going to raise that as well. That he's neither. I was going to just bring that up in this context of this.
yeah.
That and I was thinking of that while we were talking about it. He's neither. He's neither deva or human. He's neither God nor human. Um, and this kind of these qualities, you can kind of get that sort of nuance from that. So anyway,
But
uh,
just one more th it's
yeah,
just a
sorry,
small
yeah.
thing, but it's always puzzled me. But with the finely webbed hands, I don't tend to see that in statuary, right? I mean, it's maybe because the hands are
Mm,
usually closed, but I
hmm.
can't think of a single statue
No,
of
I
the
don't
Buddha
either,
where
but I'm going to
that's
be
really
looking for
present.
it now after this
Yeah,
discussion.
right.
I'm going to be
Yeah.
looking more closely for these marks. Some reason I never thought to do that, before now. I've never thought when I've seen a Buddha statue to say, does it have any of these marks?
But
Anyway,
because
yeah.
with one other exception, which is coming up, and that's the only one I haven't noticed in statues. So, like, I've seen these
Oh,
the big what's the word I'm looking for when he's lying down, but there's a more specific term.
reclining Buddha,
Reclining,
reclining Buddha. Yeah.
the reclining Buddha in Thailand, the temple opposite the palace, and you can see very, like, his feet are level, and they have 1,000 spoke wheels on the
Oh, yeah,
soles,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
like the long slender fingers, but also well, I'm jumping it now, but the full sized heels, that's all there, and like,
Yep.
it's anyway.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah, exactly. And the lobes, does it get to the lobes here at some point? There's something about the ears.
Yeah, I'm sure
There's
that'll
often
come.
that's the one you do. It's the easiest to notice. But um, yeah. Oh, and while we're speaking of the appearance of the Chakravartin, I wanted to say that's what this is. This I
No,
created
I
this.
got that. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I
I
figured
got
you.
that.
Yeah, and I've had it up for a few videos now, a few different sessions, several sessions now, because a while back, I wanted to have this conversation with Kyokan, but there was some other thing with my own questions about the Dharma that was a bit more pressing at the time. So I decided to go with that, you know. But yeah, so I created this a while back for to have this very discussion. This kind of is a depiction, my depiction of kind of, my attempt at what a future Chakravartin king might look like of one of these levels, you know. And this is so it's kind of a combination of Chakravartin and the Shambhalic
Mm,
king,
mm, 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 mm,
kind of
mm.
a thing. Kind of what you can see is has sort of modern, more, you know what I mean, modern
Yeah.
robes. Anyway, and the tie as a sort of anyway. So yeah. So anyway, I was just having some fun with Night Cafe AI Studio. I've gotten quite into that. I use it for all my thumbnails, obviously, but
Mm-mm.
and for my videos. But anyway, so here we go. So coming back, I digress. Um, so full-sized heels, yeah, we said that. Arched insteps, thighs like a royal stag. That's never. That's it's quite. It's quite a strong
Yeah,
image. Yeah. You think of like a bodybuilder kind of. It
yeah,
brings to
right,
mind like
yeah.
the. Do you know what I mean? A bodybuilder kind of stature of muscles. You know what I mean? Anyway,
But that's the thing.
yeah,
Like the you know the Chakravartin and the Buddha both come from a warrior caste, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's
True. Exactly.
right, and there's a lot of interesting stuff about the sort of martial prowess of the Buddha, and obviously he, you know, he transcends that,
Yes.
but it's part of his history.
It. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. No, that's very, very, very good point. Very, very good point. It
Mm.
does come from that. Yeah. So makes sense. And also, if you think about he was, he was. You think about the stories of him at court. He archery and just did all the fine things. So I'm sure he was very, he had to be very fit to,
Mm, mm, mm.
to have that, you know, have that strong, appearance at court. Do you see what I mean? Um, so yeah. Anyway, interesting. So 9, hands reaching below the knees. Again, that's something. It gives that other will. You're thinking. It brings to mind the tall man, the slender man, the men in the weird, the creepy. I'm getting into the creepy things, but the men in black, that
Mm, mm, mm.
the lanky men in black kind of things from the kind of tales of high strangeness kind of thing. But I'm not saying the Buddha is creepy. I'm just saying it brings something. It's that otherworldliness
Mm, mm,
that
mm.
it brings to mind. When hands that reaching below the knees. But also I suppose that's symbolic of their, or speaks to their reach. The reach of the Buddha is,
Well, it's
beyond,
also
is long, is beyond, is vast, incalculable, beyond all world, beyond all worlds. Anyway.
and it's also how I can't remember whether it's Krishna or Rama, but one of them is described in either the Mahabharata or the Ramayana as having arms that reach below his
Mm,
knees.
mm,
And
that
at
makes sense.
least Rama is considered in some traditions to have been an earlier incarnation of Shakyamuni.
Yep.
And then sort of conversely in the Hindu
Mm.
tradition, Shakyamuni is considered a, yeah, I mean, you
In
know,
the Vaishnava, yeah, I think
yeah,
the
yeah,
Vaishnava tradition, yeah, he's considered to be a avatar of Vishnu.
right, along with
The
Rama and
Buddha was
Krishna.
the
So
next,
there's, yeah,
yeah. So it just kind of, yeah, exactly. It's all kind of connected. But yeah, I'm not surprised that they have that symbol because the spiritual, all the Dharma. All the, in the broad sense of the Dharma. When we say the Dharma, we mean the Buddha
mm,
Dharma,
mm, mm, mm,
which
mm.
I think is the kind of original truth, the original. Um, but they if you say dharmic religion or dharmic spiritual paths, that includes a broad range of all different Hindu kind of sects and paths, and Jainism, and also what's the one that are there, um oh, the other one, the
Not the
they wear the
Sikhs.
turbans, and the
Sikhs,
the Sikhs, yes, the Sikhs, and
Sikhs,
they
yeah,
have
yeah,
the comb and
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
comb and the sword and the you know that's considered dharmic as well. So
Mm, mm,
there
mm,
are
mm.
many, spiritual cousins. I call them our spiritual cousins. There's ladies at work that I work with that are Hindu, and that when we talk, that we have a lot of affinity. We speak a similar language, which is
Mm,
quite
mm,
which
mm,
is
mm.
quite nice. And that's what I call them. We're kind of spiritual cousins. sort, because lots of there's a lots of similarities in the, especially in the cosmology. Obviously, Buddhism, the Buddha kind of interpreted it for us so that we could see the ultimate truth of it, and it just makes so much more sense. I feel, my
Mm,
reaction to
mm,
Buddhist cosmology is that that makes much more sense than the various Hindu frameworks, or the Jain framework, or the Sikh framework, or it makes it all make sense. In fact, it makes all cosmologies of all religions make sense to me, because I can see the elements in all religions that, of different things. I'm like, oh, that's this that's from the
mm,
Buddha
mm, mm,
teaching,
mm,
that
mm,
it's just kind of just reworked and not quite right, and it loses the point. But it's, do you see what I mean, in the other cosmologies? But it's there. Whereas in Buddhism, the cosmology is just perfect. It just makes perfect sense. Do you know what I mean? And it just, one flows from the other, and the connections of it, it's perfection, to me, in terms of a spiritual cosmology. Whereas the others I don't
mm,
think achieve that, respectfully.
mm,
I don't
mm.
think they have that same level. So anyway, we come
We're at
back.
number 10.
Number
We
10.
were, we just finished number 9,
Number 9, yes. So well retracted male organ,
which you
which
won't
is
see in the statues.
interesting. What's that? Sorry.
Well, that's the one of these that I said earlier, the only other one of these for obvious reasons that you don't see in the statues. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, but there's and I just the only thing I know about this, but I think I don't know, it's really interesting to me. There is a meditation for, and I'm not sure if it's a Mahayana or Theravada, but that in visualizing or meditating that you sort of dispel your own sexual desire.
Mm, yep.
Obviously, I mean that's not something with it that has a kind of like that's not
Yeah.
a
No.
Shin thing, but it is
No, I see.
interesting to me that
Yeah.
in the tradition.
And
Yeah.
also, there's a kind of, you're kind of sublimating that
Mm,
vital force. It's kind of,
mm,
in Taoism,
mm,
it's called the
mm,
vital
mm,
force.
mm, mm,
In and I think Zen borrowed a lot from Taoism. And different, and in Buddhism, there's different terms, but there's this, in meditation and in different practices, you're kind of preserving that, and sort of sublimating that vital force, that
mm, mm,
you're that vital sexual energy is transformed into something else, and something kind of purer or more refined in the Buddhist practice. Do you see what I mean? um so I think it speaks to that kind of thing, that it's somehow, you know what I mean, when it's well retracted, it's almost like it's inverted, brought back in.
mm.
That
Well, yeah,
power
exactly,
is brought
exactly,
back into
exactly.
itself, you know, and very respectfully, and not, but it makes you think of something uncircumcised,
Mm, 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 mm,
you
mm.
know, that the appearance of that. Anyway, not to get too gross,
But I think
but
that is what it's
take it to the
supposed to.
gross level of
Yeah.
humanness. But there's something symbolic in that somehow, that retraction. Do you know what I mean? Inward, and where it talks about, and that you're and through that you're somehow purifying the inflows and the outflows in an extra, in someone who's a Dharma master, or a meditation master, or an extraordinary being. You know, they they purify the inflows and the outflows. There's that phraseology, and I'm thinking of that as well. That somehow, you know, there's that retraction is somehow, I don't know, speaking to that on
Yeah,
some
no, I
level.
think that's
Yeah,
entirely correct. I think
yeah,
that's entirely right.
yeah. And it's amazing. The Dharma is amazing. It just is amazing. Anyway, that it even uses that. It's even that is a teaching. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just
Mm,
how
mm, mm,
crude,
mm.
how crude we human beings are in our thinking and our response to sexuality, and all of that. How crude and animalistic, and you know and whatever, and just or obscene, or just, it's a joke. It's, do you know what I mean? Or an innuendo. With this, it's quite profound. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm, mm.
It's turned in the Buddha Dharma. It's turned into something quite transcendent and profound and perfected. Yeah, it's amazing. I love this place. I love this place. Have you ever seen those adverts? It's probably haven't in your.
No, it's
There was
completely
this
gone over my
guy.
head. So.
This guy on MTV, from MTV years ago in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I think, who was like a sports guy for MTV, and his like signature thing was his, I think he would wear a baseball cap, you know, backwards, or, and that was his thing, and he did a series of adverts for Burger King. And that's where he would say at the end, he'd go, I love this place. He has his hat on, and he'd turn it around, and get Burger King, and he'd turn it back, or something along that line. I love this place. And that's how I feel about Buddhism. I love this. I love this teaching. I love this place, So anyway, and I'm glad to be a Buddhist. Very glad. So, right. We've just hit the 10-minute mark. Well, now we're 8 minutes and 40 seconds mark. So speaking of marks, back to it. Where do we get to? What number was
Uh,
that?
so 11. We're on.
Well retracted, yeah. So we're on 11.
Yeah.
Height and stretch of arms equal. The height and the stretch of arms equal. So
I think that
that
means sort of
means,
the stretch from tip to tip. Because if each arm gets down past the knee,
yeah,
it can't be the stretch of one arm, right? So it has to be that way is the same as this way.
yeah. So every way it's all equal. So it's
Yeah.
almost like a
Yeah.
circle. That's what I
Right.
was kind of thinking of. It's equal every way, not just, you know, it's just makes a perfect circle probably when he, if he stretches his arms, all around, which kind of makes sense.
Mm,
A
mm,
perfect
mm.
wheel, a perfect circle. Right. Um, and again, that strength, the stretch, the reach
Mm, mm,
is
mm,
perfect
mm.
as well. That perfect reach of the Buddha, to all worlds and beyond. Um, Thinking of that line from Toy Story. What's the line? Something and
Oh, to
beyond.
infinity and beyond.
To
Yeah.
infinity and beyond. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking was. Anyway, right. So height. So yeah. So 12. Every hair root dark colored. So he's got no gray roots. There's no there's no gray roots coming through. There's no bad coloration or old hair dye happening with the Buddha. It's all dark roots, youth, youthfulness, beauty, and something of that. There's something about the scalp. There's something about the
Mm.
hair with Buddhas too, isn't there? The way that the hair is kept for
But
a
that's something
and
that's
the
really, I heard this. I was holding on to that till it came up, but now that because I'm sure is going to be in here.
yeah
There's
yeah
something about the hair of the Buddha and the way that's represented. I'm sure you've heard this kind of um. It's not correct. It's got no kind of doctrinal basis, but the idea that they're um snail shells.
yes
Yeah.
yeah yeah
But it's fascinating to me that he's almost always portrayed with this highly abstract
mm,
blue kind of like almost knotty hair.
yeah,
Um, and then there's
and it's
this
very
this
perfectly kind of
yeah, exactly, right?
symmetric, and you know it looks great.
Everything, yeah, everything about it
Great.
is,
He's
is
got great
perfect.
hair, the Buddha. He's got great hair. So sorry. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
But it's pretty rare that you get an image of him, maybe more in a Theravadan tradition, but in the Mahayana, it's very rare you see this naturalistic hair on him. The only actually
Yes.
the only instance of that I'm aware of in the East Asian Mahayana tradition is there's this series of paintings from the Ming Dynasty, which I desperately want a copy of with Shakyamuni, Confucius, and Lao Tzu
Mm.
all sitting
Mm.
together. And in that tradition, he's always portrayed with naturalistic, just kind of like curly hair.
Natural, kind of flowing, curly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like just sort of looking like what I imagine must have met some Central Asians or South
Hmm.
Asians,
Hmm.
and just like looking like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I don't know the story about why that is, but I don't really have any kind of sort
Interesting.
of substantive
Yeah,
point
but
to make. It's just super
there's
interesting.
something about that. So it's even right down to the, it's talking about here the, the every hair root dark colored, right to the root. Perfect. Perfect to the root and beyond. You know. Um, so body hair graceful and curly. There you go. We were just talking about that, the gracefulness and the curliness, the of the body hair, um, golden hued body. Again,
And that I think gets
the gold.
what we
Yeah.
what we were talking about at the beginning about sort of the degrees to which that's present. I mean, I can imagine some, sort of a kind of human or humanoid
Mm,
flesh body
mm,
having kind of, you kind of like a golden kind of
hmm.
tan,
Hmm.
but then like a Sambhogakaya being
It
literally gold.
would be gold
Yeah,
as the
yeah,
Sambhogakaya, but in
yeah.
our the sort of manifestation of the Nirmanakaya body, it would for us it would appear beautiful. You know, the complexion is just, we would just say it's like gold. It's
Mm, mm, mm,
just that
mm,
has
mm.
that beauty, that sparkle, that refinement, that certain, you know, sheen of gold, what gold would have, but only the human, skin, flesh equivalent of that. So again, it's that precious, it's that precious level, the gold, just like we're talking about with the Chakravartin, the gold, the highest one is the gold. The highest Chakravartin is the gold. The perfect Chakravartin is the gold king.
And that this is referenced in one of the 48 vows,
Yes, yes,
right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah, exactly. In fact, in the sutras, there in the longer sutra, is that they do talk about the 32 marks. They don't go
I
into
believe they
necessarily
do.
every
Yeah.
mark, but it does mention the 32 marks, and yeah,
No,
I
I think that's right.
think it's this one. It's pretty sure it's the larger or the longer.
I'm
Yeah,
almost certain you're
yeah,
right. It's the
yeah,
larger sutra
yeah,
talks about that.
yeah. More than once, I think. But all right. So, and then there's that comparison in the larger sutra between the Buddha realm and marks and existence, and there's always there's lots throughout that. There's those comparisons, and then there's the samsaric. This is our life, and this is the yeah. Anyway, so 15, 10-foot aura around him. So again, that perfect aura sphere instead of just the
Mm, mm,
circle.
mm.
Perfect 10 foot and 10, being 10. 10 is often a number of perfection, isn't it? Completeness, isn't it? Kind of in just that's kind of almost a universal human
I mean, you see that in the metric
symbology,
system,
or
right?
yeah.
Everything is multiples of 10.
True. Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So both so it's got the practical and the higher kind of sense of that. Anyway, so 16, soft, smooth skin, kind of coming back to what we've already been talking about, that perfect, this refined, perfect, that's how we just, of course. 17, soles, palms, shoulders, and crown of head, well rounded. Soles, palms, shoulders, crown of head, well rounded. We got 1 minute left on 17. Anything else you want to say about that before we
No, I've got a cliffhanger though for you if we can jump to 19,
Okay, and also
right? Is
18.
is that
18's pretty interesting as well. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
lion-shaped body makes me
Yes.
wonder how much any of these can be taken literally, because that probably, I mean, he's not literally a lion, right?
Right.
So
Exactly. So the stature maybe of a
Right,
This,
maybe the symbolism of it is
yeah,
more
is
important than the
more, yes,
literal. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, exactly. The stature of a lion, the majesty, isn't it? That's there's often royal
Mm.
associations. The majesty, the royalty, the nobility of a lion, and the stature, the strength, the power, the beauty, it is the king of the jungle, isn't it?
King of
So
the Jungle. It's a
it's
recurring.
If you wish to be the king of the jungle, it's not enough to act like a king. You must be the king. There can be no doubt, because doubt causes chaos and one's own demise.
कभी याद करे जो जमाना माटी पे मर मिट जाना जिक्र में शामिल